Hey YouTube, this is Charles here. Starting another video series. I'm not abandoning or stopping the Common Rider. Those will keep coming. I'm just doing something else here to help broaden the channel. And I'm going to be revisiting the subject of an earlier video, which is D&D, the 4th edition. D&D 4th edition is kind of in many ways a callback to D&D's earlier incarnations, I guess, after spending more time with it. D&D, of course, got its roots in wargaming, and the new 4th edition plays a lot like a tactics game. So, for those of you who ever played like Steel Panthers or something like that, so let me just go ahead and set this down and move the tripod a little closer so I don't have to reach all the way out. Okay? So, alright. Now, there we go. Messy. D&D 4th edition basically, as I said in my earlier video, it plays a lot like a video game now. And to this end, they went TSR, I guess, well, TSR, Wizards of the Coast went back and rethought the way the game was played and the way it had evolved, or devolved, along the way from 3.0 to 3.5, even a Pathfinder, to an extent. And they rethought everything, and basically they revisited the heart of D&D, which is the combat engine, and the way characters interact during combat. And as such, characters now during combat, which is, like the heart of the game, fall into one of four big roles. You have defenders, who basically are, the meat shield, which is a technical term. Like their name suggests, they have a high AC, which is armor class, and high hit points, which is health. And their job pretty much is to defend the party. I mean, they take most of the damage dealt out in a fight, and they're pretty good at dealing out damage. They're not the best at doing damage, but they're pretty good. Their characters like fighters and paladins, which are in this book right here, the Player's Handbook, which is the first of the three core rule books you'll need to play the game. And that's basically, kind of like a defender does. He defends. Now, fighter, of course, is one defender, and the other iconic character from D&D, the wizard, is another type of character, or another type of another role called a controller. And like his name suggests, he controls the battlefield. He moves characters around. Let's see actually if I can flip to them. Oh, where are they? Yeah, it'll actually help if I can look at those. But let me pull him out here. And, he moves people around. He can do area of effects. He's kind of a lot like saying, he can target multiple enemies, whereas a fighter or a defender can only target one. And see, like, here's how 4th T Wizard looks. The third type of character role is what they call a striker. And a striker is more like he does the most damage of anybody in the party to any one target. Now, there are certain exceptions where, like, a striker can target multiple enemies, but usually he does enough damage in a single attack or a single round to almost kill the creature, or just, he does the most, basically. And this is where characters like rogues, rangers, even warlocks now in this book fall now. So, you have... Now, most strikers can take... they can take some of a beating. They have decent AC, they have decent HP. A wizard, of course, has neither, because, he's not really meant to be taking a beating. Which leads you to the fourth role, which is leader. And a leader, as the name suggests, he's in kind of helping everyone, which he does by buffing people, by healing people, by giving them other sorts of bonuses, bonuses to hit, bonuses to damage, saving throws against effects, yada yada yada. And as you can see, right there in the little subherb, it says Arcane, Divine, and Martial Heroes. Now that's the power sources for these characters that are found in this book. And power sources kind of work like... It's like, well, basically as the name says, it's the source of their powers or their abilities, which I'll get to in a second. Martial Heroes are characters who gain their abilities and strength through physical exertion, or physical training, basically. Characters like fighters, like rogues, like rangers now, are considered a martial character instead of a nature character. We do see nature characters later on in Player's Handbook 2. They're primal characters, which I'll talk about when I do that book. You also have the Warlord, who's kind of like a new character in this book, and he's kind of, a leader. He's a leader type class. Cleric, who's also in this book, he's a leader as well. And he's considered a divine character because, he prays to the gods and such. Paladin is also considered a divine character. I know that's not a big shock. I just want to remind everybody that it exists. And of course, arcane characters are things like the Warlock, the Striker, and the Wizard, who's controller. Sadly, the Wizard's the only controller mentioned in this book, so you have to do with that. Now, according to the powers, and let's just talk about this, we have the Ranger section here. And I'm not sure if you can see this, but it's kind of fuzzy. All of the characters in this, the character classes in this book, have two builds in them. Basically, it's two ways you can make the character. Some are more offensive than defensive. Like the fighter has two options in here. He's called a shield fighter or damage, or I think it's a war fighter. I think. Okay, let me see. Yeah, great weapon fighter and guardian fighter. I'm sorry. Basically, one's more offense and one's more defense. The paladin has two builds where one's more of a healing, supporting, kind of like a leader type character, and the other one's more of an aggressive, in-your-face paladin. And I can't remember what the hell that's called. I think it's called like the arduous paladin or the ardent paladin, I think. But basically, you have two different kinds of builds to favor two different kinds. Other books, the supplements introduce further kinds of builds for the characters, and that's kind of affects the way your powers work. Now, powers in this game work basically like abilities. You have what are at-wills, encounters, and dailies. At-wills are things like these green powers right here. They're always green. You can do them whenever. Sure strike, you can do this whenever. You can do an attack, standard action, melee is a weapon, and then target one creature. Attack is your strength plus 2 versus AC, and hit does 1 weapon damage. Alright? So you use that whenever. A red power is an encounter power. Basically means once per fight. Or one time you roll initiative, you can use this power one time unless something else happens that you recharge it. In this case, you have like a passing attack, which is an encounter. It's a martial source weapon. It requires a weapon, standard action, melee. One creature is the primary target, and it's an attack of strength plus AC. It hits, you do one weapon plus strength modifier damage, and you can shift 1 square, which basically you move 1 square without provoking opportunity attacks. And then you can make a secondary attack against the secondary target, which is down here. And again, it's not very kind of blurry, so let me zoom in right there. Secondary target, one creature other than the primary target. Strength plus 2 versus AC. So that's another 1 hit, 1 weapon damage. A shift, by the way, is basically one of 2 ways of moving. You can either move your speed, which is now in squares instead of in feet. Like you can move 6 squares at a time. And a shift lets you move without provoking attacks of opportunity, which basically means you can move and the other guy won't be able to get a free swipe at you. The final thing down here is what they call dailies. Dailies are gray or black, although you can highlight them blue most of the time, and they're once per day. Once you use this power, it's gone for the day. You have to sleep for another 8 hours or whatever to use it again. In this case, brute strike, daily, martial, reliable weapon, target one creature, strength versus AC, and if you hit, you do 3 times the weapon damage plus your strength modifier. So that's pretty cool. And then you have powers that are called utility powers, which, let me see if I can get that. Yeah, there it is. Utility powers are powers that don't do direct damage, sort of say, but they help you out. They're kind of like things you can use out of combat. Now, the other thing, of course, is, well, these are all kind of nice powers, and, but what about magic? Well, magic is now divided into 2 groups. You have regular combat style magic, which is things like magic missile, and you have what are called rituals, which are things like knock now. That you knock on a door and do some other or raise dead or whatever. And that's pretty much all I can say about this first book in this first video. I'll be back later on to talk about other books and other videos, and maybe do another video on this book as well. So until then, this is Charles, signing out.